Can you throw some light on the clear leadership, Gervase?
Yeah, well, that was the early work around understanding that experience. Everybody's having a different experience,
Mm,
and and what was going on there was this started for me in the early '90s, where because in the '80s I had been involved in how do we build more empowered organizations, and a lot of the solutions that were structural. And I was involved with socio-technical systems work and team-based manufacturing, and we thought we had the answer. At General Motors at the time, every new manufacturing plant was being built using socio-technical system principles in in partnership with the union, which had been a complete transformation. And
mm,
these new plants would get up and running, and they were fantastic. People loved them. They were really egalitarian, semi-autonomous work teams, very productive, high quality. And we thought, okay, we found it. We've got the answer. We're done.
mm,
And, and by 1990, the data was coming out that most of these were reverting back to command and control within about 6 to 8 years.
mm,
Right? Most collaborative forms of organizing that were highly successful. It just blew my mind. Like, what? How could this be? It's terrible. I had a bunch of different ideas about it. Um, and around that time, I took a sabbatical from the university and went to work for a kind of a startup in the telecommunications industry in Canada as the internal OD consultant to one of the executive vice presidents. And my job was, because we're taking a bunch of people from monopoly telephone companies and
mm,
bringing them into what now had to be a fast-paced, competitor, technology-driven,
mm,
kind of organization. How do
mm,
we create that kind of culture? How do we, where and especially where the middles are really empowered to make
mm,
decisions, act fast, break rules, do stuff.
mm,
And we had great people, and
mm,
we had good leadership, and we had all the resources we need, and we had a clear purpose. Still
mm,
didn't work.
mm,
And at the end of the year, I was like, why isn't this working? And one day I'm sitting in a meeting,
mm,
and I realize, and it's a meeting of people who all really want to be collaborative. They're very well intentioned. They're smart people. And we're sitting in this meeting,
mm,
and as things are being said, everybody's got their company face on, and they're
mm,
nodding.
mm,
But I'm thinking to myself, I don't really agree with that, but I'll take that offline. I don't think that's really what's going on, but I'll talk about that later. You know,
mm,
and
mm,
you know what I mean? And I
mm,
realized that what goes on
mm,
all the time in our organizations is
mm,
people are constantly making up their own story about what's going on in
mm,
other people, with the boss, up above,
mm,
sideways, and
mm,
that they generally don't check out those stories with the
mm,
person they're making up about, right? Like
mm,
they'll go talk to their buddies, and then they'll work out, and come up with an explanation, right? So in organization behavior, we call this sense making, right?
mm,
And we're all sense making beings, and we're compelled to make sense of what's going on around us.
mm,
But generally, we don't check those stories out.
mm,
And then the other thing I realized about sense making is that typically the stories we make up are worse than the reality,
mm,
right? That eh, like my boss doesn't return my email. Oh my
mm,
God,
mm,
am I gonna get fired? Like, you know, you know, and, and then I don't ask my boss, am I gonna get fired? And I go talk to somebody else, and and so we make up a story, and it tends to be worse than the reality. And then the other thing about sense making is future acts of sense making are based on past acts of sense making, right? Where things
mm,
don't make sense. So once I start to develop a story about you or about the marketing group or whatever, then I tend to see things that fit my story, and so I as I started teaching this stuff to leaders, I came up with the term interpersonal mush. So I call this interpersonal mush. And organizations are full of interpersonal mush, and interpersonal mush is, I think, what destroys collaboration. and our capacity for partnership in organizations. And that unless we're clearing the mush out continuously, it just grows and grows and it becomes toxic. And after a while, people go, I can't be a part of this anymore. Or I don't trust you, or it creates distrust. It creates misalignment. It's part of it's part of what's going on when people are in the room and they're only saying what they think is okay to say, and then they go out in the hall and they talk about what they really think. Oh man, tons of mush going on out there. And so I've become convinced that our ability to create truly collaborative organizations, high-performing teams, all this is based on our ability to get rid of the mush and get to interpersonal clarity. Where I know what my experience is, I know what your experience is, and I know the difference between them. And it rests on this recognition that everybody's having a different experience all the time. And that my job as a leader, I can't control your experience. I can't make you want things or feel things, and that as a leader, if I say things like everyone has to be on the bus, the message you get is hide my experience, say what you want to hear, and take it out into the hall. and right. And then as I studied, why was interpersonal mush so it's just so prevalent. Like when I do these talks to managerial groups, and I'll say, how many of you have seen interpersonal mush? Everybody puts up their hand, it's like, and we started looking at what are all the negative consequences of it. And there's a long list, and everybody goes, this is just obviously bad for our capacity to organize. And really, the solution is very simple. It's check out your stories, notice the difference between what you actually know and the story you're making up. Check out your stories, right? Be honest to yourself and those you need to be in collaboration with. And I call this partnership. And I've come to believe that we've been trying to solve problems of collaboration, whether we call them agile or whatever. We've been trying to solve problems of collaboration mainly structurally, creating better information, supports, delayering, networking, network teams, and all this kind of stuff. But really, what it relies on is a relationship between you and me where we both feel responsible for the success of our common purpose. And what happens in most organizations is people make the boss responsible. And the boss does a bunch of things that make people feel like I'm not responsible here. You're responsible. And that's I think what kills collaborative organizing. And so what it takes is leaders, managers, supervisors, whatever, who can build a relationship where we both feel like we're responsible for the success of our common. We all feel responsible for the success of what we're trying to do. Then we have real collaboration. And what kills that over time is the mush, is number one. Number two is leaders who think their job is to make sure people are having a good experience or having the right experience or fix their experience. Right? Because then what happens is I learn to just keep my experience to myself and not tell you if I'm having a different experience. And I stumbled into family systems therapy. Explains a lot of this, what's going on here and why it's going on, and some ideas for how to fix it. So that's what clear leadership is really about, is understanding what are the skills that I need as a leader to be able to create and maintain these relationships of partnership, both laterally and with people above me and with the people who work for me. And a lot of it's about the ability to just clear out the mush. And
Mush. What do you mean by the mush?
the mush is interpersonal mush is an interaction where people are operating based on stories they've made up and have not checked out. Okay. So, and this goes on, like, even as I'm talking to you, right, and I say things and I look at and I notice the sort of, your body expression and what I start to make up a story about, you like what I'm saying or you don't like what I'm saying, or you agree or you disagree, and then I act on that story without ever checking it out. And then there we go. We're starting I'm starting to go into the mush with you, right? And
one of the reason I clarified what is mush also, because I was creating something in my mind. I thought better I clarify with you because that is what exactly we are talking about.
Yes, that's right. And and you know, people are afraid to check out their stories, right? Because what happens is there's this unspoken agreement that I won't say anything to upset you and you won't say anything to upset me.
Mm,
And so
mm,
and the fear that because I, in a sort of unconscious way, I'm taking responsibility for your experience. Right?
mm,
And,
yeah.
and what happens a lot is I'll start to feel anxious or upset about something you're saying or
Mm,
thinking or feeling or wanting. And I'll
mm,
try to get you to change your experience so I can feel okay.
mm.
Right.
Again,
This
it's roundabout.
and when that happens, it destroys partnership. It's and so part of this is work for so in the leadership development work I do is
Mm,
about helping managers to become what we call more differentiated. And differentiation is the ability to be connected and separate at the same time. So one area of differentiation is my ability to be separate from you and connected to you at the same time.
mm, mm,
And what that means is I'm separate in the sense that I know what my experience is. I know what I think, feel, and want,
mm, mm.
independent of you, right?
Yes.
But I'm interested in knowing what
Mm,
your experience is, but not because I'm going to change mine as a result of it, or I'm going to let you emotionally hijack me or something,
yeah.
But I might change, I might not,
Mm,
but so I'm separate and connected to you at the same time.
mm,
And, and what 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 makes it difficult to create a system where you allow the variety of voices is when you have a leader who gets anxious when they start hearing people say things that are different from what they're hoping they're going to want or say, and then
mm,
tries to move in there and convince them they ought to be thinking or feeling something different, right?
mm,
Without even really, and so because their belief is like for us to work together, we all have to be having the same experience, which is
yeah.
impossible uh,
Yeah.
to begin with, And yeah, so most of that work is really about learning to manage my own anxiety in a
Mm,
different way.
yeah.
Uh, yeah, and that requires some personal growth,
Mm,
and and a part of that is also learning to be separate and connected from my experience.
mm, mm,
So, like one of the things that causes people to act in these unconsciously um, uh, ways is I start to feel anxious, and so I act on my anxiety. I have no way of separating myself from it. The anxiety takes over. It's like my feelings take over, right? Or I want things, and so my wants take over. Um, and so part of I think personal growth and one of the things that's required for leaders is the ability to know what I'm feeling, know what I'm wanting, but be able to be choiceful about that, to be separate from it, so I can look at it and go, nah, yeah, I'm feeling anxious, but this is actually a good process, and the conversation that's taking place here is useful, and so I just need to you know let my anxiety be, kind of put it to the side, stay connected to what's going on here with you or with this group, or that sort of thing. And that's some of the co-leadership training. That's part of what we're doing is training people in how to notice when they're about to act
mm,
based on some feeling or want they have that's
mm,
pushing them. It has them right now rather than them having it.
mm,
And yeah, to notice their own patterns around that and to
mm,
learn that um, really, I'm not responsible for your experience, and you're not responsible for my experience, and you can't control my experience, and I can't control your experience.
mm,
All I can really do as a leader is just shut it down so you don't talk about it,
mm,
and then it goes out into the mush.
yeah.
Right? Like one of the things I learned early on was I was watching this. So well-intentioned leaders who want to be collaborative leaders, one of the things they'll want to do is bring the people who work for them together to learn together from their collective experience around something. So they'll say, you know, let's talk about what happened at the meeting or the sales presentation or whatever,
Mm,
yesterday or last week. Talk about what we liked or didn't like, you know, and decide what we want to do, same or different in the future, which seems like a very reasonable thing to do. Right. The problem with that is that everybody had a different experience.
Yeah.
Sometimes completely different. Like
Yeah.
from one person thought it was a great meeting, one person thought it was a terrible meeting. You know what I mean? Right.
Yeah.
And so the first thing that happens in that conversation is a struggle over who had the right experience.
Yeah.
Well, guess who had the right experience? The boss had the right experience. And as soon as the boss has the right experience, everybody else goes, okay, boss, you're in charge. Tell me what to do. You know, and right, and and a boss who at that moment is trying to create a collaborative, partnership-based organization is actually creating minions who are like no longer feeling responsible for what's going to happen next. So anyway, that's where the clear leadership work has
Mm.
come from, and where it's been going, and you know, I wrote a book about it, second edition. People read the book, they get a lot out of it, but when they come and take the course, everybody takes the course, goes, oh my God, I didn't really understand this till I took the course, because that embodied understanding of, oh, here I'm doing it again. Here I am, you know, in this unconscious move to try to change people's experience so I can feel okay.
Mm.
That's the hard part of learning. Or, you know, here I am disconnecting and not even noticing other people having an experience so I can feel okay. You know, it's like either too much separateness or too much connectedness, and learning to be in that sweet spot of both separate and connected at the same time. It's a
Mm.
lifelong journey, you know. I think in the 4 days that we do clear leadership, we start people on that journey,
Mm. Mm.
and they actually show up differently.
Mm.
Um, yeah, like the research we've done on the impact is consistently about 9 out of 10 people, their peers say this person's showing up differently now.
Mm.
So developing the sort of the pedagogy to make that happen has been exciting and very fulfilling.